So this is from Mike McElroy. Hi, John. In a recent chat with Andrew Sweeney, you said that you saw freedom as not an intrinsic good, but rather an instrumental good. Yes, I did. I was wondering if you could elaborate some more on that. Isn't freedom an inherent good and usually described as much as most writings about freedom? If you could relate it to Isaiah Berlin's famous notion on the two freedoms, freedom from and freedom to. Yeah, Berlin, I rely on that all the time, freedom from and freedom to. That would please me to no end. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Mike. First of all, that distinction that Berlin has made between the two, I rely on that all the time, freedom from and freedom to. I'll bring that into my answer. So why do I think that freedom is not an intrinsic good? So there's two ways in which we could be talking about freedom here. We could be talking about sort of political freedom in the sense that the state or other vested interest cannot unduly put duress on me in order to manipulate me towards their end. So this is the sense of moral freedom that is a recognition of me or the recognition of you as an intrinsically valuable human being. So that notion I'm not disputing, but it's not really the freedom that's the intrinsic value there. It's that freedom marks the intrinsic value of a human being. So I don't have any right. So that's how I think about sort of political freedom. That the intrinsic good there isn't freedom. What bears the intrinsic good is the person, and the freedom is a way of everybody acknowledging the intrinsic value of human beings. So that's what I would say about political freedom. What I was specifically talking about with Andrew, though, was a deeper notion, and it's one that perplexes me. And I think there's some sort of defect in me in some way, and I don't mean that just ironically. Maybe I'm missing a certain gene, or maybe it's I have a gene similar to Spinoza, because what I'm talking about there is what's often called free will. That's what I was responding to with Andrew, and I don't know what it is that people mean by that. Now, here's where we have to be very careful. We have to distinguish Spinoza's notion from sort of a kind of Christian notion, or at least a Christianized notion. Spinoza's notion is that something is free to the degree to which it is self-determining. What he means by that is the degree to which my self-organizing autopoietic processes of body and mind are the most causally relevant explanation of my behavior, then I'm free. Notice, by the way, that all explanation of all behavior invokes causal relevance. All explanation of all behavior invokes causal relevance. What caused the sinking of the Titanic? Oh, well, the Titanic hit an iceberg, right? Well, really? Or was it that they were going too fast? Or was it that the United States and Great Britain were competing for sort of supremacy in the world? Was it the fact that the British steel mills of that time were not as good as ours today, and so the metal had flaws and contamination in it that caused it? Like, blah, blah. You know what you end up saying? The entire history of the entire universe caused the sinking of the Titanic in some fashion. That's ridiculous, because that would be the same for everything we wanted to explain. And so what we do is we pick out what are the most causally relevant factors, and that's relevant to how we're trying to explain things. Because like when I want to know what caused the sinking of the Titanic, notice I can just modify the question slightly. What caused the Titanic to sink so slowly? Well, that's a different thing. Okay? So causal relevance is necessary to any explanation of any behavior. So me invoking it is not some slippery slope. So if what you mean is, no, I mean that you're totally, free of all of history and all of causation, that you're something like Aristotle's unmoved mover within yourself, that there's some aspect of a human being that is not causally affected by anything else, even their own bodies, even their own memories, and that it can just arbitrarily make you do things. That seems like something first of all, how would you get any evidence that such a thing exists? Given that it doesn't respond to any other entity in the universe, it has no causal interactions with anything, how could you possibly obtain any evidence? You can't say, well, I know that, because what you're saying is your memory can be, it causally interacts with this in some fashion, right? These are deep questions. So that's one issue. I don't understand what it is people are thinking they're claiming they have, because I don't know how you could possibly get any evidence for it. But here's the point that Mike brings up. I don't know why you'd want it. I know why you want political freedom. That makes great sense to me. I know why you want to be self-determining as much as possible. That makes sense to me. I don't know why you want free will as having an unmoved mover within you. That makes no sense to me. It means that your actions would be absolutely arbitrary. They would not be responsible or responsive to any features of your environment. You would not, for example, believe something because it was true, because the truth of it wouldn't cause you to, you're still free. I don't want that freedom. I don't want that freedom. I want my thought to be as responsive and responsible to the truth as possible. I want my actions to be as responsive and responsible to the good as possible. I want my sensibility and my experience to be responsive and as responsible to the beautiful as possible. I, in that sense, want my thinking, my action, and my experience to be as determined by what's true and what's good and what's beautiful as possible. Freedom is instrumental, if it even exists. Freedom of the will, I don't think it is. But what I think people mean is they want to be able to cultivate self-organizing, the virtues that allow them to be more and more determined by what's true, good, and beautiful. They don't want there to be extraneous factors, political or other than their self-determination, to be the most causally relevant factors. But surely they want an education. Surely they want to learn. Surely they want knowledge. So for me, freedom is at best an instrumental good. When it becomes an absolute, in cases of absolute free will, I can't understand why it has any value at all, let alone intrinsic value. And what about freedom from and freedom to? I think we need to be bringing this into our conversation more and more and more. And this is a deep question. I'm going to take time on this because this relates to something that I've been talking a lot about. So I've been talking a lot about the hermeneutics of suspicion. This is Paul Ricoeur's notion that because of figures like Marx and Freud and Nietzsche, and then perhaps you could extend that into Derrida, etc., we have a hermeneutics of suspicion. We're always suspicious that there's a hidden motive, an unconscious reason, that there is a secret conspiracy, a hidden cabal, and all of this. And then the prototypical moment of truth is when you can disclose that, when you can say, aha, j'accuse, right? Like in the Dreyfus affair, there's the conspiracy, there's the secret motive. All along, they really wanted to do X, although they were saying Y, right? And that's the hermeneutics of suspicion. Now, the hermeneutics of suspicion is needed. I'm not saying we should try to eradicate it any more than I'm saying we should stop reading Freud and Marx and, Nietzsche, etc. But the hermeneutics of suspicion frees you from. That's what its job is. It's designed to free you from. And by the way, you should direct the hermeneutics of suspicion more at yourself than you should at anybody else. Because the point is to free us from being deceived, being deluded, being manipulated, being bullshitted. So there's an important function there. But here's what we're progressively forgetting, and what concerns me. And this goes, you can see this point being made by Plato, Hegel, Merleau-Ponty, philosophers in different traditions saying something along this line. The moment, right, realizing that something is an illusion, and that's what the hermeneutics of suspicion depends on. That's the moment. Aha! There's the illusion. I now see the man behind the curtain, to quote the Wizard of Oz, right? That depends on you taking another experience as real. Namely, when you've moved the curtain aside and you now see the man, that's a real experience, right? The hermeneutics of suspicion is actually completely dependent on a deeper hermeneutics. This is the hermeneutics in which appearances are not deceiving us, not distracting us, not distorting, but when appearances are disclosing of a deeper reality, like the elegance of a scientific theory. These are the hermeneutics of beauty. And the hermeneutics of suspicion is always dependent on and in service to the hermeneutics of beauty. And the hermeneutics of beauty is freedom to. That is freedom to connect in a meaningful fashion to what is real. So that's my extended answer to your question, Mike. And I did invoke freedom from and freedom to. So thank you very much for that excellent question.